Hi, my name is Paola Ortega, and I'm going to talk to you about the Zapatista National Liberation Army. First of all, the Zapatista National Liberation Army is a movement that arose in response to discrimination and marginalization suffered by original inhabitants of Mexico, specifically those in Chiapas. On January 1st, 1994, was the first declaration of Selva Lacandona. The first declaration of Selva Lacandona was when the Zapatista movement started their campaign in the south of Mexico. It was on this date because it was when Mexico entered to the NAFTA. The Zapatista movement stated that they weren't equally recognized. They didn't have the same opportunities, they were starving to death, and also there were a lot of diseases. The Zapatistas wanted a change. On the other hand, the government of Mexico considered the Zapatistas as a rebel group, and instead of communicating with them, the government decided to fight them. Cedillo, the president of Mexico at the time, recognized them as a rebel group. The Mexican government attempted to criminalize and repress the movement. The most important international organization that was involved was the United Nations, who for the government and the indigenous community to reach an agreement. They wanted to have a peaceful dialogue to benefit both parties, the Zapatistas and the Mexican government, as well to make sure the human rights were respected. Some of the most important arguments of the United Nations was that they were looking for peace and security, developing friendly relations, as well as promoting social progress and better living standards and human rights. On February 16, 1996, the San Andres Agreement was signed, where the Mexican government committed to modify the constitution in order to give rights to indigenous people and autonomy to Mexican indigenous communities. Even though the San Andres Agreement exists, the Mexican government has continuously ignored it. This has led to continuous demands for indigenous people for autonomy. The government's response is that it lacks the resources to provide these demands. All of this has led to the creation of autonomous territories known as caracoles, which are based on social cohesion. The San Andres framework is supposed to give indigenous people the right to decide and exercise their own legal framework, elect their own official, and make their own laws. The indigenous communities demand its authority for the San Andres Agreement to be respected. They wanted the reforms to be applied and for the government to take action on their demands. But most important question is, how should a modern state be configured in order to ensure integration of cultural diversity and creation of a real climate of equality and equity? For me, the answers are education, campaigns, and coalition. Respecting the United Nations declarations of the human rights of indigenous people, it states that the indigenous people have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions, providing education in their own language. In order to embrace diversity and to enhance a multicultural and intercultural educational community, there will be awareness campaigns and workshops about indigenous cultures through the Republic, starting in Chiapas with the movement community, promoting social progress and the inclusion of communities in their societies. Working together, meaning the government, the United Nations, and the Zapatista movements, it's possible to define a framework for the community. Both parties should agree, and it should be regulated by an international organization in order to protect both parties. Thank you.